here, the Bookish Princess. Welcome to the first reading vlog of 2022. I hope everybody's new year has been off to a great start. One thing which you might have heard me mention over the past couple of weeks that I started in 2022 was a brand new blog I'd been meaning to for a while, so it was really fun to just get it set up, get it going. So far I've just been kind of typing up a post to go along with every video I upload, but who knows where it'll go in the future. Thank you so much to all of you who have subscribed to it. You can enter your email to subscribe and get the new blog post sent to your email, or you can just check in on the website. It's bookishprincess.substack.com. I'll leave it linked in the description down below if you'd like to check it out. A new year is always a good time to start new ventures. It was a year ago, I'm pretty sure, in January that I started my Discord group, and that has been so much fun just to have a little place to chat with you guys. If you want to join it, you can send me an email to emma@bookishprincess.com or send a DM to my Instagram account, and I'll send you the link to request to join. It's nice to have just a simpler, more streamlined kind of chat room. That's what Discord basically is, to interact with you guys and just post occasional updates. I really like that the pace of the Bookish Kingdom Discord is just chill and slow, and you don't have to respond right away or worry about an algorithm or things like that. We've done some movie watches and read-alongs, which, speaking of read-alongs, so you've probably heard me talking about Febregency happening next month. It's been really exciting to get ready for it. I've been posting all kinds of videos, my reading haul and Febregency TBR, and also a Jane Austen reading guide, which has some great inspiration of Regency era works that would be fun to read for the readathon next month. But I thought it would be great to do a read along in my Discord group, and the book that I ended up picking is one of the books from my TBR. It is Dorothy Wordsworth's journals. So this is William Wordsworth, the poet, his sister. She lived with him and his wife and their family for quite a while in the Lake District. Grasmere is in the Lake District. I visited Dove Cottage there with my cousin, which was so much fun. I actually bought this anthology of Dorothy Wordsworth's writings at Dove Cottage in the gift shop, and then this one is from my brand new English Journeys series. I think I'm kind of gonna dip into both. In Discord I posted the link. There's a nice Gutenberg edition that I think is kind of all of her journals from the Lake District and from a trip she went on to Scotland. They're just interesting little vignettes of daily life in the Lake District. Some of them are very short and very prosaic about, doing the laundry or baking bread. But it's just neat to get a little taste of life during the Regency period in the Lake District with one of the incredible poets of that era. Speaking of Wordsworth and poetry, one of the challenges for Febregency is to read the work of a Regency era poet, and I'm going to be doing a fun poetry night with the other hosts. It should be a fun sort of Regency salon. I wish I could have it in real life and just invite all of you over and we could have syllabub and read poetry. But this is basically going to be the virtual edition. So I mentioned in my Febregency announcement that if you guys would like to be a part of it and send me a video clip of yourself reading a short Regency era poem, then feel free to do that. Same email, emma@bookishprincess.com. But make sure you send it to me by the end of January. I have gotten a few submissions already, which is really fun. So yes, anyway, I'm very hyped for Febregency. I feel like I haven't been doing quite as much reading as I meant to because I've been kind of researching Regency works and trying to whittle down my own TBR. I do kind of feel like I should probably be starting some of my Febregency TBR now because some of them are quite long books. I never finished The Mysteries of Udolpho, which I started back in October. Sometimes, you just read slowly, and that's okay. But one book that I have already finished this month was Dancing Peel by Lorna Hill. I had misplaced these books for a long time. I read them when I was growing up and loved them. It says age 10 plus on the back. It's fairly large print and it has great illustrations. So it's actually even shorter than it appears. I got through it really quickly. I'm so glad I found it and was able to pick it up again. The story is of a young ballet dancer. She's growing up in the border country in Northumberland, so the very far reaches of England and Scotland. She actually lives in an old border fortress, so in this incredible castle, and her family's name is Dancy. It's a French name, Dancy, but the castle comes to be known as the Dancy or Dancing Peel, which is actually very appropriate because Annette loves to dance and her brother also loves to dance. He's very into Spanish dancing and always has his castanets on him. I love the descriptions of dancing in here. Like the description of Max. He's the brother who loves flamenco. She talks about how he's beating out one rhythm with his feet, but tapping out another rhythm with his castanets, and how like it was really difficult to achieve that. And of course, Annette is always practicing her ballet moves. The stables at the dancing peel, it's kind of a run-down old castle, and so the stables aren't in use for horses, but they're in use by Annette for her dancing. That is her dance studio. It's the Royal Theatre. There's a royal box, and when a newcomer arrives with a horse wanting to use the stable for his horse, crazy idea. She does not appreciate it too much. Angus is the newcomer. He's around her age. He is from the Isle of Skye, and his background from there becomes just another fun part of the work. There's a bit about a kitten. They rescue a kitten, which is pretty great. My kitten is just prowling about right there. You want to come say hello? No, not really? Anyway, just a delight. And there are more books in this series. Dancer in the Wings, Dancer's Luck, and The Little Dancer. I'm not positive what the exact order of these are. I'm going to have to look them up. But I really want to continue at some point. I feel like I have too many other things I want to read, but at some point I want to continue following Annette Dancy's dancing journey. Would you like to just say hello briefly? You've had lots of new uploads on your channel this month. Lots of fun videos. I've uploaded a video of her as a tiny kitten because I have some videos from when she first arrived that I never uploaded to her channel. It's youtube.com/CymbelinTheKitten if you want to watch. Oh, thank you, Cymbeline, getting me all clean. But it's so funny. When I took her to the vet recently, they were like, oh, she's so tiny and cute. But when I look at those videos from when she first arrived, she was so tiny. Ready to get down? It's crazy how tiny she was. She's getting to be such a big kitten. Anyway, on to more books. I went through my shelves and picked off a couple things that I'd really love to get to. I would love to reread Down the Garden Path by Beverley Nichols. My mom actually managed to get some of his other books. They're kind of hard to find, so I might have to borrow those from her. But it's been a while since I read this. I just loved it the first time I read it. It's basically like if P.G. Wodehouse wrote a gardening book. It's so funny, but also like he's obviously so passionate about gardening, and I really got into gardening for the first time last spring. And I feel like, you know what, it's not too early to start planning out, start thinking about my spring flowers and spring and summer planting strategy. And Beverley Nichols, I do remember this, loves winter gardening. He very much is in favor of not shelving all of your floral plans over the winter, but he points out lots of lovely flowers that will grow in the winter. So I might have had to start them in the fall, so it might be too late. But I think it'd be really fun to read, a nice way to get through the gray winter days. I did not quite finish Dante's Paradiso in 2021. I really wanted to, but I didn't quite get there. I do have a couple cantos left, and I need to sit down and read you guys out some of my favorite quotes and passages because it's just so beautiful. I'm trying to decide if I like it more than Purgatorio. I'll have to think once I've finished up these last cantos and decide, because in some ways I think it's a little bit denser. Like that's probably why it's taken me longer to get through. I'm trying to go slow. Dorothy Sayers' notes are really excellent and fill you in on all this context. Dante is traveling through heaven with Beatrice and meeting all of the spirits and saints in heaven and learning different theological truths. I love it when Dante meets some figure in paradise, and Dorothy Sayers notes in the notes that, oh, this person wrote this book, that when Beatrice delivered a dialogue on this subject, she's actually drawing from this person's book. There is quite a lot about the history of Dante's own time period, condemnations of what he saw going wrong in the world, and sort of prophecies of doom. And so that can take a little while to get through because you're sort of filling yourself in on this history you're not aware of, that his readers of his day obviously would have been aware of. Here, should we read just a really quick quotation? I love the way the first two cantos started. Some of the most beautiful writing in the whole Divine Comedy is in the start of these first two cantos of Paradiso. The glory of him who moves all things soever impenetrates the universe, and bright the splendor burns, more here and lesser there. Within that heaven which most receives his light was I, and saw such things as man nor knows nor skills to tell returning from that height. For when our intellect is drawing close to its desire, its paths are so profound that memory cannot follow where it goes. Yet now of that blessed realm whate'er is found here in my mind, still treasured and possessed, must set the strain for all my song to sound. O power divine, grant me in song to show the blessed realm's image, shadow though it be, stamped on my brain, thus far thyself bestow. Definitely finishing that up. I would also love to pick up some Flannery O'Connor. So it is Flannery O'January this month, which is a readathon, and Christy Lewis, who's one of the hosts of Febregency, is one of the hosts of Flannery O'January. She's been reading Flannery's letters, which sound so cool. I need to go to the library because they do have a copy of it there, and I would love to pick that up. But I do already have these two on my shelf, so even if I just read one of the short stories, that could be fun. Christy just did a review of The River, which I read not too long ago, and she just did such a great job summing it up. I thought her video was really fantastic. It's been too long since I last read Flannery O'Connor's prayer journal, so I would really love to pick that up. Another one of the Febregency co-hosts, Jennifer Brooks, is doing a discussion of Fathers and Sons by Turgenev, which I realized I did not read any Russian literature last year, which is really a shame. I'm gonna have to correct that this year. Those are my plans for the moment, but they are quite enough to be getting on with. So my Linzer tart of the day is a raspberry rose jam. It looked a little lonely on the plate all by itself, so I put these Pocky sticks on with it. Oh, come on. I thought I would have more than half a minute. Come on, honey. I brought you some toys. I just fed you. I wanted to tell them about the book. All right, quick, while she's distracted. It reminds me a little bit of the beautiful pastries on this tea towel. I always use it as a tablecloth rather than a tea towel or dishcloth because it's so beautiful. I got it at Harrods ages ago. But anyway, Down the Garden Path is our read for today, and it's by Beverley Nichols. I have talked about this book in the past. In the past. It is absolutely charming. If you like gardening, it is wonderful. I actually first read it before I got into gardening this past summer.
I tried to do a lot of gardening, and I did plant some bulbs for spring. I didn't do much winter gardening, which Beverley Nichols loves winter flowers. But it's been fun to reread this now that I actually have tried to garden, on my own. The first time I read it, I just thought it looked like a beautiful book. I actually randomly found it at Barnes & Noble. I'd never heard of Beverley Nichols before. But he's an absolute delight. My mom, who has also gotten into gardening, also loves Beverley Nichols. Look at this beautiful plan of the garden at the front of the book. It is a very dilatory and sort of wandering account of how he started his cottage garden. I love this description of how you arrive at his cottage. A narrow lane that twists and turns directs you from the Great Northern Road to the village of Always. It is seldom that one meets any traffic on it. A startled child pressing back into the hedge with exaggerated caution as you pass, a woman on a bicycle with a floppy old-fashioned hat and a curved back, an occasional farm cart which can only be passed with great ingenuity and many amiable sallies. For the rest, the only other occupants of the road are the rabbits, which are legion. He uses the best vocabulary. In the spring there are many young ones, so pathetically innocent and silly that sometimes it is necessary to stop the car, dismount, and speak quite rudely to them before they are so obliging as to run away. At night their eyes glow with phosphorescent fire, and sometimes they are hypnotized by the lights of the car, so that one must pull up and turn out the lights in order that they may recover their self-possession. Very pleasant are those little halts in the dark, with the wind playing in the high trees above and the rain dripping monotonously on the windscreen. I love how he describes the process of becoming a gardener. Gradually, my impatient desire for immediate results, which is the besetting sin of all beginners, died down. I began to take a joy in the work for its own sake. Until you actually own a garden, you cannot know this joy. You may say, "Oh yes, I love a garden." But what do you really mean by that? You mean that you like to wander through rows of hollyhocks swathed in tulle, you, not the hollyhocks, and that you like to drink lemonade under a tree with a nice young man who will shortly pick you a large bunch of roses. You hope he will take the thorns off, and that there will not be any earwigs in them, because if you found an earwig on the rug in the car, you would die with horror. So should I. You like walking out onto a terrace and looking up at a wall that is covered with pale, tipsy plumes of wisteria, to walk under arches of orange blossom, thinking the prettiest thoughts, and you may even stoop down to pick a bunch of pansies, if they match your frock. You like these things, yes, but you do not like groveling on the earth in search of a peculiarly nauseating slug that has been eating those pansies. You do not like putting a trowel under the slug, hoping that it will not suddenly burst or produce fearful slime, and tipping the slug with great gratified horror into a basket. You do not like bending down for hours to pull up hateful little weeds that break off above the root. I just love his joy at owning his own garden. I still stand before a hedge with a pair of shears in my hand, saying, I can clip this hedge exactly as I please. I can make it round or square like a castle. If I choose, I can clip it away altogether, and nobody can arrest me. To dig one's own spade into one's own earth. Has life anything better to offer than this? There was some podcast I was listening to, or was it my mom was telling me about it, where the person said that, like, we all need to just get in touch with things that are real, like cats and digging in the earth. Beverley Nichols has these delightful flights of fancy and imagination that are just so much fun. My first experiment was with a lupin which flowered unexpectedly in the garden 3 months after my arrival. When the flowers were over, the pods split open, revealing seeds, and in a mad moment, I decided to plant these seeds. This is mad, I said to myself as I tipped out the small black pellets. Quite mad. Do you seriously think they will come up for you? Do you honestly imagine that this creative miracle is actually going to occur? I really did ask these questions, simply because seeds that had failed to receive the baptism of a penny or a sixpenny packet seemed, somehow, not quite authentic. Of course, the conscious mind proclaimed that all seeds had to come originally from flowers, and that, therefore, these hot, ripe lupin seeds, plucked straight from a healthy plant, had as much chance of success as any that could be bought at a shop, even at Woolworth's. But the subconscious mind demanded the packet. It wanted to see the beautiful blurred picture on the cover. It wanted to read that they formed gigantic spikes of dazzling blue flowers and other fearful lies like that. Later he calls garden catalogs masters of deceit, which is pretty hilarious. But yes, we go straight into midwinter madness and how he was absolutely determined to have winter flowers in his garden. I want my garden to go on. I cannot bear to think of it as a place that may be tenanted only in the easy months. I will not have it draped with nature's dust sheets. My mom read this and got quite a few of the flowers. She has planted aconites and she has planted the variety of snowdrops he recommends. As I was reading this, I asked her, well, what about winter jasmine? And she pointed out into the backyard and was like, that's what's under those tarps. But I don't think she has ever experimented with witch hazel. I loved his description of witch hazel. It is a melancholy thought that the millions of tired shopgirls who wearily smear their faces with watered extracts of this enchanting plant every night should know so little about it. A very melancholy thought indeed, for the shopgirls, as they dab on their parched skins its healing essences, are not reflecting upon the true sweet source from which the healing comes. It would be better if there could dance before their tired eyes the impudent shining sequins of the Hamamelis mollis, the feathery, spidery, yellow exuberance of this darling plant. For was there ever such bravery, such delicious effrontery, as is displayed on many quiet walls throughout England by the witch hazel in midwinter? See, England is milder than the northeastern United States where I live, so I'm not sure all of these would work. My mom was saying that some of them do not come up as soon as Beverley Nichols says they did for him in England, although he obviously does not think of his climate as mild. Here's another delightful description of winter honeysuckle. Honeysuckle makes most people recall lemonade and country girls in bonnets and parched grass and all the rest of it. However, I am perverse, so it makes me think of icicles. For there were long icicles dripping from the rain gutters on the sparkling January morning when I first found my winter honeysuckle in flower. The drops fell like truant diamonds from the icicles onto the frozen creamy petals. Yet the flower was not deterred. It shook off the drops and continued to emit its fantastic sweetness. Next winter, I'm going to have to plan ahead and try to get some things rooted in time to have some winter flowers, because I have not had very many. Although I do have some things inside, and obviously my beautiful pink hyacinth has just been so lovely. So anyway, those are just a few delightful quotations from Beverley Nichols.
I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about Dante's Paradiso. This is the third part of the Divine Canto, and it takes us literally to paradise. Paradise is one of those words that in our modern culture, gets applied to all sorts of things. This is the actual paradise, which Dante is daring to try to articulate and try to imagine. And of course, we've really worked our way here all the way up through Inferno, through Hell, and all the way up Mount Purgatory, all the way through Purgatory. So definitely that setup has been important, but Dante's writing is just so beautiful. It really is astounding that Dante dared to imagine, hell, purgatory, and heaven, and that he did such a good job of it. He really was trying to do it in a faithful way and in a way that honored God and was following God as well as he could. Oh, you that follow in light cockle shells, for the song's sake, my ship that sails before, carving her course and singing as she sails, turn back and seek the safety of the shore. Tempt not the deep, lest losing unawares me and yourselves, you come to port no more. Oceans as yet undared my vessel dares, Apollo steers, Minerva lends the breeze, and the 9 muses point me to the bears.
But you, rare souls that have reached up to seize betimes the bread of angels, food for men to live on here, whereof no surfeit is, you may commit your bark unto the main, hard on my keel, where ridge and furrow flee, ere the vexed waters level out again. The heroes that to Colchis fared might see, amazed, great Jason at the plough-tail ply, but greater far shall your amazement be. That which is born with us and cannot die, thirst for the godlike realm, had made us skirt almost as swiftly as the visible sky. So Beatrice, who first sent Virgil to meet Dante in the dark wood where he was lost way back at the beginning of Inferno, Beatrice is now guiding him through heaven. What faith holds here shall there be known by seeing, not demonstrated but self-evident, like those prime truths that brook no disagreeing. These should the shafts of wonder not assail, for though sense lead the way, thou art now aware of heights the wings of reason cannot scale. Now as the snow that yields to the warm thaw is stripped to its bare substrate, and lays by the coldness and the whiteness it once wore, thine intellect lies stripped, and now will I inform thee with such living light as should dance like a twinkling star before thine eye. Dante is going to learn from the souls that he meets. Beatrice is also going to be his guide and really help explain things and fill things in. Once again, the notes are just amazing and fill you in on so much background information that you need to know. There was this really cool part about how there was this idea. The belief that the spheres emitted music as they revolved was first taught by Pythagoras, disputed by Aristotle, and revived by Plato. So, and Dante kind of mentions it in various places. But isn't that such a beautiful idea that even here on Earth, there's this music coming down to us from the heavens that we can't quite hear? In Cicero's Somnium Scipionis, the younger Scipio, raised in his dream to the Milky Way, hears the heavenly harmony and inquires of the soul of his grandfather, what is this great and pleasing sound that fills my ears? I feel like you hear about the music of the spheres or the music of the heavens, but I'd never really thought about what it meant or that belief. And of course, Dante gets to hear some of that music as he travels through heaven. There's always this emphasis that even though the souls are now all united in praising God and in dwelling in God's light in paradise, they haven't lost their individuality and they haven't lost their memory of their earthly lives and even of their sin. But their sins no longer cause them any shame. We're journeying through the levels of heaven just as we journeyed through the levels of purgatory and inferno. And there is a difference, a distinction between the levels. And yet, like the souls that maybe are on technically a lower level of heaven don't feel any kind of competition or don't feel less than. Brother, our love has laid our wills to rest, making us long only for what is ours, and by no other thirst to be possessed. If we could wish to bide in loftier bowers, our wish would jangle with that will of his, which hath assigned our proper place and powers. And in these gyres thou'lt find no room for this. If love is here our necessary state, and thou bethink thee what love's nature is, nay, 'tis the essence of our blissful fate to dwell in the divine will's radius, wherein our wills themselves are integrate. Then I saw plain how heaven is everywhere paradise, though the grace of the first good falls differently in different regions there. There are just so many beautiful thoughts and little passages and ideas that nothing save the light of truth allays our intellect's disquiet, I now see plain. God's truth, which holds all truth within its rays. Intellect, like a wild thing in its den, when it has run and reached it, there can rest, as reach it must, else all desire were vain. So in heaven there's true rest. And this was also great. He that thinks he's been wronged by his neighbor's virtues, wrong he goes. Sometimes Dorothy Sayers' notes would lead me back to look back at the passage. This one is about forgiveness of sins. Either must God of his sole courtesy remit, or man must pay with all that's his the debt of sin in its entirety. Within the eternal council's deep abyss rivet thine eye, and with a heed as good as thou canst give, do follow this. Dorothy Sayers says about the eternal council's deep abyss, it's the infinite depth of the hidden decrees established by God from the beginning of the world. Isn't that beautiful? From the foremost ranks as they drew nigh, rang such hosannas that the ache to hear those songs again will haunt me till I die. It cannot be that any nature found at odds with its environment should thrive. No seed does well in uncongenial ground. If men on earth would bear in mind and strive to build on the foundation laid by nature, they'd have fine folk with virtues all alive. But you distort the pattern of the creature. You cloister him that's born to wield the sword and crown him king who ought to be a preacher.
Thus from the path you wander all abroad. That's that same idea that like the individual is important to God. And that individual gifts are very different and vary from person to person, but that doesn't make any person less because they don't have the same gifts or abilities as another person. They should just seek to develop their own gifts rather than to be envious. I think one of the epistles recently was that passage where, you know, the church is one body and the hand and the feet have different functions. And if the eye wants to be an ear, well, the eye is never going to be able to be an ear, but it can be a pretty good eye if it puts its mind to it. Here there's no repentance, here we smile, not at the sin which comes no more to mind, but at God's ordering touch, his master style. We contemplate his art, which hath designed great works and fair, his goodness, which draws home to this high world, the world of lower kind. But now to satisfy the full round sum of all thy longings gendered by this sphere, I must tell on, for thou hast more to come. It is delightful how curious Dante always is. Like, he wants to know. He just has so many questions. His eagerness is just delightful to see. No one should ever be too self-assured in judgment, like a farmer reckoning his gains before the corn crop is matured. For I have seen the briar a prickly thing, and tough the winter through, and on its tip bearing the very rose at close of spring. And once I saw her whole long ocean trip safe done, a vessel wrecked upon the bar, and down she went, that swift and stately ship. Let Jack and Jill not think they see so far, that, seeing this man pious, that a thief, they see them such as in God's sight they are. For one may rise, the other come to grief. I think that's a fun reminder, even though Dante obviously is imagining who, you know, who is in heaven and who's in hell and who's in purgatory. Like, those particulars aren't really what's important. What's important is, you know, that he is seeking God, and that's really, and as Dorothy Sayers kind of emphasizes, this is an allegory for each individual person's sort of ascent journey towards God in this life, not just in the afterlife. This was another point at which Dorothy Sayers' note made me turn back and reread and notice a beautiful passage. From horn to horn, from top to base, their station changing went moving lights, which as they met and passed throughout a dazzling coruscation. Thus we on earth, swift as slow as zigzag or straight, little or large, in this or that direction, see particles of bodies disparate, dance in the shaft of light that carves a section sheer sometimes through the shuttered darkness, which by art and skill men make for their protection. So just the idea that like in a shaft of light, you see dust particles dancing. The movement of the lights along the horizontal arms of the cross and up and down is compared to the dancing motion of particles of dust caught in a beam of sunlight filtering through the slats of a shutter. Milton uses the same comparison, as thick and numberless as the gay motes that people the sunbeam. That's such a cool image, and such a timeless image because, you know, I think we've all watched dust particles dancing in a sunbeam. There's another comparison that Dorothy Sayers kind of makes more modern. It's this one. Every fool that e'er distorted scripture, as a sword distorts straight faces into fanciful. And Dorothy Sayers notes, a sword, if it is slightly curved, gives back a distorted image. To understand what Dante means, the reader may try seeing himself reflected in a tablespoon if he has not a sword handy. One of my favorite parts, this could be considered a spoiler, so there's your warning. Towards the middle, Dante meets one of his own ancestors, like his great-grandfather, who is actually in the sphere of the martyrs. And there's just such joy when the two of them meet. And he's so proud to find his ancestor in paradise, but there's this reminder, that's a mantle which soon shrinks away, for round the edge time with his shears will go, unless we add to it from day to day. So even if, you know, you have something in your family in the past to be proud of, you know, you have to kind of keep adding to that mantle yourself, or else it can fall into decay. The honor of something that was once good can become tarnished. Dante obviously very much feels that way about Florence, which was his hometown, and he was banished from that. Florence was just, it sounds like it was just a mess. It was in the middle of all these fighting factions, and I think that's partly why I've been going slowly, because there's just a lot of elements to take in. There's all that history of Dante's day. There's also history stretching back through Rome and kind of Dante's thoughts on government. I think the infighting in Florence really made Dante look back fondly on like the days of Caesar and the days of Rome when Italy was more united. And so you see those political ideas. You also obviously see that lots of theological ideas and lots of theological points. Dante has all these questions that, the souls in heaven try to help him clear up. So yes, it's been a slow read, but just so happy that I picked up the Divine Comedy again, and so happy that I finally got to Dorothy Sayers' translation, because I love her mysteries so much. It's been on my list. I've thought to myself, oh, that'd be so fun to read it, and I'm just so glad I did. If you've ever felt a little intimidated by Dante, Dorothy Sayers is a great guide, and you can definitely take it slowly because there's just so much beauty and so much goodness to soak in. All right, so I thought I would fill you guys in on some books that I recently acquired, which, to be fair, I didn't buy all of these. And the ones that I did buy were used and a really good deal, so it was like I couldn't leave them behind on the shelf. Porthos was sorting through some of his books recently, and I think he bought these used, has C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy, which is kind of crazy that C.S. Lewis ventured into science fiction. Out of the Silent Planet is, I think, the first one. And then also That Hideous Strength and Paralandra. Anyway, I feel like it's just one of those quirky things about C.S. Lewis that you occasionally come across and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't know he wrote that. So at some point I would like to read it. I don't think I'm going to get to it this month, but hopefully later this year, and then obviously I will return it to Porthos. These three were less than $3 each. Look at this. These Don Camillos were originally 50 cents. Wouldn't that have been nice? I'm sure I have mentioned Don Camillo before. This is a series of stories by Giovanni Giureschi. It's about a priest in Italy, so this is slightly after World War II, and he is very much at odds with some of his communist villagers. But there's this dichotomy because even though they really strongly disagree politically, they used to be really close friends and they fought together and worked together during the resistance during World War II. So it's really sad that like the politics now divide them. And even though they're at odds and always trying to score off each other, they also kind of quietly are always helping each other. So it's just a really sweet, really funny, well-written series. I found Comrade Don Camillo and Don Camillo and his flock, and I just thought, how can I leave Don Camillo on the shelf? I can't do that. And then I was really hoping they would have Shadows on the Rock by Willa Cather, which I really need to buy. I absolutely love that book. I reread it a couple years ago, and it was just as lovely when I came back to it as the first time I read it. It's funny though, because I've read Oh Pioneers. That has been quite a long time, and I didn't really like it. I think I read Shadows on the Rock first and expected to like Oh Pioneers as much as Shadows on the Rock. Shadows on the Rock is set in Quebec. It's about a young girl, you know, growing up in like newly settled Quebec, and so it's just a really rich, beautiful setting. But I love it so much, I feel like I should try more of Willa Cather. This one just was a couple dollars. It's called A Lost Lady. I thought I would grab it, hopefully get to it at some point this year. I feel like my January reading is already kind of booked up, and then February is all gonna be Febregency, but in March, I'm sure I will be able to get to some of these. I have been watching some movies this month, and so I thought I would give you guys some quick movie reviews. A lot of these are Disney Plus. I just happen to be watching a lot of Disney Plus over Christmas and this month. There's this one called Between Sky and Sea. I think that's what it's called. It is a travel documentary about Japan, and it like breaks up the different islands and just has all these incredible drone shots, and it gives me Impression de France vibes. It's not quite as like artistically perfect as Impression de France, because Impression de France, the France movie at Epcot, is very unique. It's like the music is so beautifully woven in with the shots, and of course you've got like kind of the circle vision theater that you watch it in. So if you love Impression de France as much as I do, I don't want to be setting up your expectations too high, but there were moments when I definitely got Impression de France vibes, and it was just a fun sort of armchair trip to Japan. So beautiful to see all the temples and landscapes and mountains and the incredible inland sea. Oh, I want to go there. I also watched Encanto. I actually watched Encanto twice. So what I just said about low expectations is so important. I feel like with Disney movies these days, it's just so hit or miss. I might really not like it. I might like it. So I just go in, you know, kind of preparing to shrug my shoulders. But I was so pleasantly surprised with Encanto. It was just charming. I really liked the plotline. I really liked the family. At first, I was a little on the fence about the songs. I didn't realize Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote them. And they are very much Hamilton-style songs. Like, packed with lyrics and rhyme and like kind of rappy and just packed with like plot in some ways too. They're wonderful. They're just not like sort of the typical Disney songs. I feel like Disney songs from classic Disney movies often have like that sort of signature sound and style, and this was a different style, but just as wonderful. I love the two songs that Mirabel's sisters sang. I think those were probably my two favorites. Definitely like Hamilton songs, because when you listen to them, they get stuck in your head and like you just start sort of singing them or playing them to yourself at awkward times. We also finally watched Jungle Cruise, which I feel like the trailer for that came out about 10,000 years ago. I really wanted to like it because I thought the trailer looked great. And the actors and actresses, Emily Blunt and The Rock, they're great. They did obviously try to get nods to the ride in. They even had a pretty good, interesting plot with some interesting twists and turns, but it was just a mess. Like, I never want to watch that movie again. It was just a mess. It felt like they had too many cooks in the kitchen. Like, there were too many people that were like, well, I want this, and I want that, and I want that. And instead of having, like, one vision that would, like, you know, say, okay, that's not gonna work, I'm sorry, but this, yes. Sometimes you watch a movie and you can tell that person was missing, that person who needed to say, look, we need a sort of coherent, like, you know, cohesive movie here. We can't have all these disparate elements. They need to fit together well. And so sometimes somebody's feelings are gonna need to get hurt because what they had in mind isn't gonna work. But it felt like there was not that voice in this movie. It was just like, okay, I get this scene, you get that scene. The pacing was weird. It was a pity because I wanted to like it, but it just fell apart. So the Disney Plus movies that I've watched recently have been all over the spectrum. We started with an excellent one, came to a middling, not very good one, Jungle Cruise. And then we come to The Eternals, which is a Marvel movie. And I wanted to talk to you guys about it. I watched it with my cousin Becky, and she absolutely loves Marvel movies. Even the ones that like she hasn't loved as much, she always buys it to get it on her shelf. And The Eternals is the first one, which is not going on her shelf. She didn't like it either. It did actually have some sort of Jungle Cruise issues. There were times when it felt like a mess and like there were big plot holes. But my issue with it was actually much, much more serious than that. The issues that I had are really with the like metaphysical and existential claims that the film is making, which you wouldn't expect for a Marvel movie, right? I didn't expect it. I guess I should give a spoiler warning because I am going to spoil the plot, although ironically the storyline is a very, very old story, as you will see. So I've watched some Marvel movies, not all of them. I've enjoyed some of them, enjoyed others of them less. I'm not really invested in it. I'm not super familiar with the world. I just took the movie at its face value because I'm not as familiar with the universe as a whole. But basically what we're told in the movie is that there is a character named Arishem. He's called a celestial or something like that, but he is defined in the film as the creator of Earth and the creator of the human race, the creator of our planet. So when you tell a story about the creator of Earth and the creator of the human race, you're telling a story about God. There's no two ways to look at it. That's God, the creator of Earth and the creator of the human race. And a story about the creator is not just a story. It's serious. It's a statement of faith. It's a statement of belief. It's a religious statement, really. It's a statement about how you're choosing to perceive reality and how you're choosing to look at existence, because you're telling a story about the creator of existence. And that's what this Marvel movie is doing. That's who Arishem is. He also creates these Eternals, and they're like the superheroes, and they're sent to Earth. They've been living amongst humans for thousands and thousands of years, kind of helping the progress of humanity along. And basically they're waiting to hear from Arishem that it's time for them to go home. So in this Marvel story, Arishem, the creator of the human race, God, is evil. He's basically just harvesting the human race for energy. The Eternals find this out, and the Eternals care about the human race, but they say, well, God doesn't, and so God has to be stopped. That's what the Eternals decide. God's plan for humanity is bad, and we are going to rebel against him. Does this sound familiar? So I've been reading Dante's Divine Comedy over the past many months. We all went through Inferno, hell together, and met the devil. I've read Paradise Lost. I'm quite familiar with the Bible. Just last year, I also reread this book, Letters to a Diminished Church by Dorothy Sayers. So she is also the translator of the Divine Comedy translation that I'm reading. And she has a really fascinating essay in here about the Faust legend and the idea of the devil. She says the devil is a spiritual lunatic. I thought that was a great phrase. Anyway, the story that we're getting in the Eternals is the story that the devil tells. The devil decides that God's plan is bad. He rebels against God and thinks that he can defeat God. On one level, I'm not even saying this as a judgment, I'm just saying it more as an academic observation. I didn't expect to watch The Eternals and find that it is a Luciferian fantasy where the fallen angels rebel against God and work to overthrow him. Porthos was just recalling that the deepest level of hell in Inferno, in Dante's work, is reserved for people who rebel against their Lord. Obviously, within the context of the movie, the Eternals have all sorts of reasons that they decide to rebel against God and they think God is evil. But when you start looking at those reasons, like, there are all sorts of holes in them. And like, that also is just like the devil. It's like, whatever reason is convenient at the moment to like plug into that hole, like you just fabricate a reason and just don't look at it too closely. Like in the movie, the Eternals, these fallen angels, admit that their span of experience is only a couple thousand years, whereas God is obviously has been around for millions of years. They acknowledge this, but they're like, whatever. Still, God's plan is evil. We need to stop him. One of the most shocking quotations in the movie that illustrates this was one of the characters said, basically, this is like almost exactly what he said, was that I'm glad I was created, But I owe nothing to my creator. I only owe something to myself and my family. And that's another one of those lies the devil tells. But like when you look at it, does it make sense? Because even just between human beings, like gratitude is important. When people give you opportunities, when they show you kindness, when they give you something, it's right to be thankful to them. You do owe them something. So why would you owe nothing to the being that literally gave you life, gave you existence, gave you consciousness and the ability to perceive and receive every other good thing in your life? Why would you owe nothing to the creator who spoke you into existence? Obviously, if you say God is evil, well, that gives you a good excuse. But I thought that quotation was interesting because they had even moved beyond that excuse. Like, it doesn't matter if God's good or evil. I owe him nothing. I only owe myself and my family anything. It's like, what? It just makes no sense. And my brother, Dart, who watched it, he said it struck him in exactly the same way. He thought it was really ironic and disturbing that at the very end, some of the Eternals get captured by God and the others, I guess, are going to save them. And one of them says, "The truth will set you free." That's from the Bible, and it's spoken by and about Jesus Christ. Jesus is the truth who will set you free. But of course, in the devil's story and in the Marvel story, it would be very inconvenient to acknowledge anyone like Jesus. It would be very inconvenient to say that not only did the creator give you existence, and so you owe him gratitude for that, but he also sent his only son down to earth. God came down and lived a human life, experienced human suffering, and died an excruciating death to set us free from sin. Because that's how much he loves humanity and he saves humanity, not destroys it, which is, of course, what the Marvel people describe him as doing. But there is one Eternal who does not choose to rebel against God, who says, you know what, maybe the creator knows a little bit more than I do, the created, so I'm not going to rebel against God, and he's the bad guy. He's the villain who has to be stopped and then has to repent and then throws himself into the sun in like a fit of sorrow and repentance. I'm Roman Catholic, I'm Christian, my faith is really, really important to me. I would say it's the core of who I am. You could take away everything else. The core of me is my faith in God. And I would say, and many other Christians and religious people from many other religions would say that the whole goal of life is to do God's will, to follow God's will. There was a really beautiful quote from Flannery O'Connor's prayer journal that like literally sums this up perfectly. Where she says, "Please help me to know the will of my Father, not a scrupulous nervousness nor yet a lax presumption, but a clear, reasonable knowledge. And after this, give me a strong will to be able to bend it to the will of the Father." So like that's the whole point, to bend my will to the will of God. To do God's will is my biggest goal, I would say. And as far as I succeed or fail in that goal, that's as far as I succeed or fail in life as a whole. I mean, obviously other things are important, being a good person, treating others with kindness, like developing your gifts, finding ways to, contribute positively to the world around you, finding happiness, all those other things are good goals too. But I would say that they only matter when they're nested in that greater goal of following God's will. When all those other things, being a good person, doing good works, if that's taken out of God's will and you're just following your own will, like that character who said he owes the creator nothing, he only is working for himself and his family, like, unfortunately, if you're not in God's will, I would say it's meaningless, the other good things that you do. And I know not everyone else has the same faith that I do. It's a path everyone has to walk on their own, but like, does the Marvel movie really have to insult people who have faith? In Down the Garden Path that I've been reading, Beverley Nichols admits that he doesn't have faith. And he is talking about a friend of his who is a very, avid Christian, and she always kind of tries to convert him, and he, kind of just shrugs his shoulders and says, that's just not where I am. But he totally respects her and respects her belief. And in the Eternals, zero respect of faith or belief. It was just so disorienting to see, because you don't expect that from a Marvel movie. Like, I don't think that Marvel or Disney movies really need to pick up the question of, is the creator of the human race and the creator of Earth good or bad? Like, they can leave that on the shelf, you know? That's religious territory, really. They can tell plenty of beautiful and meaningful stories without going into that realm. And like, if you are gonna go into that realm, do you have to take the devil's side? Anyway, that one went pretty deep. It went right to the core. But hopefully if you're familiar with my channel, that wasn't surprising at all. Anyway, the perfect movie review to wrap this up, the perfect antidote to what we've been talking about, is a series which is completely free to watch. You just have to go on their website. It's called The Chosen, and it is about Jesus Christ and his life, his mission as he recruits the apostles, and it's so well done. It is just so encouraging to see something like that being produced these days, being put out, and yeah, completely free. I feel like when you look it up on Amazon Prime, they want to charge you for it, which is weird, because if you go to their website, The Chosen, just search for The Chosen, it's free on there. And yeah, just so good. Actors are all good. Sets and like filming, it is quite slow paced at times. I think we don't even meet Jesus for like the first 2 episodes, although that's probably smart of them, because then like you can't wait to see him. You know, you're like, when's he gonna show up? And it's so exciting to see all the apostles show up one by one. I feel like now when I'm, you know, reading the Gospels or hearing the Gospels at Mass, and they're like, oh, this is what Nathan said to Philip, I'm like, I know them. Sometimes the action of the Bible just seems so far away because it took place 2,000 years ago. It can sometimes feel a little unreal. But I think movies like The Chosen are great because they make it more real. Obviously, it wasn't exactly as they depict it in The Chosen, but you know what? It was probably pretty similar, and they faced similar issues. The apostles are constantly fighting with each other. You know, everyone is kind of wondering, what is Christ going to do? Because the Jewish people have been waiting for the Messiah, and they've been expecting a military leader, and that's not what Christ is. There's so many beautiful Jewish prayers that they incorporate as well, you know, because the apostles are devout Jews, and many of them know the Torah really well. Yeah, just like I mentioned, it is slow paced, so don't get thrown off by that. I think there are 3 seasons right now, or maybe 2, and the 3rd's coming. Anyway, my family has been hugely enjoying it, and I would highly, highly recommend it. Friends, here we are at the end of January. I thought I would do one last little update to finish off this reading vlog. One thing I wanted to mention before I forgot, so I made Linzer cookies this month because I wanted to use up all my jams. Whenever we go to a bakery, I feel like Linzer cookies, if there's a Linzer cookie, I have to try it, and it was really fun. I'd never tried making it myself before. It seems like almond flour is like one of the key ingredients that you know, gives a Linzer tart, Linzer cookie its distinctive flavor, but I used up most of my Bon Maman Advent jams, and now I have all of these empty jars. And I thought it might be fun. You know how in BookTube people often do, it's usually like a bigger jar, and they put lots of TBR suggestions in it, and then they like pull one out each month. Well, I thought I would put maybe one suggestion in each jar, and then I could just pick a jar off the shelf each month, but I need some suggestions to put in them. So if you have any books that you haven't heard me mention that you think I might like, leave them in the comments down below, and I'm gonna write them on little slips of paper and fill up my Bon Maman jars. I know I should just recycle them and get rid of them, but they're so cute. It just seems like Won't I need 25 empty mini jam jars someday? Surely some creative project will come along and I will want to use them. So I have been reading Fathers and Sons by Ivan Turgenev, getting in some Russian literature. I just got the free version on my Kindle. My brother Porthos told me about this quite a while ago, so when I heard Jennifer Brooks bring it up, I thought I should get to this, and it's been really fun to finally open it up. So it is about fathers and sons. We have two kind of older members of the Russian generation of the time. So you have two brothers, Nikolai and Pavel. Pavel was in the army, kind of a philanderer in his youth, but has a very good opinion of himself and is somewhat aristocratic, although he also thinks of himself as progressive and liberal. His younger brother, Nikolai, is much more likable and very good-hearted, but obviously pretty inept. He runs an estate out in the countryside, but doesn't do it very well. It doesn't seem to be going very well. They did split up this estate with the peasants, so they, no more serfs. They divided it, but like I said, it's not going very well, even though, they think of themselves as progressive and liberal and trying to make changes. Things don't seem to be changing the way they would like. And Nikolai's son, how do you pronounce his name? Arkady, but they call him Arkasha. Is that it? The sort of pet name is so sweet. So Arkasha has just graduated from college, and he brings his friend Barazov home to visit. Arkasha is kind of a follower of Barazov, and Barazov is a nihilist. Barazov is determined to believe in nothing, acknowledge no authority, and Nikolai had been hoping to kind of become closer to his son when his son moved home, but obviously they're in two different generations and there's kind of a gulf between them. Pavel, Arkasha's uncle, especially is annoyed at Barazov. There used to be Hegelists and now there are nihilists. We shall see how you will exist in a void, in vacuum. And now ring, please, brother Nikolai Petrovich. It's time I had my cocoa. I feel like if you actually set out to believe in nothing, you wouldn't get up in the morning. But Barazov says, we act by virtue of what we recognize as beneficial. There are things that Barazov says that, kind of resonate with you. As for the age, why should I depend on it? Let it rather depend on me. All our enterprises come to grief simply because there aren't honest men enough to carry them on, while the very emancipation our government's busy upon will hardly come to any good because peasants are glad to rob even themselves to get drunk at the gin shop. You deny everything, or speaking more precisely, you destroy everything, but one must construct too, That's not our business now. The ground wants clearing first. So Bazarov wants to clear the ground, but what for, is not really clear. And obviously, even while Bazarov and Arkasha are trying to deny everything, you see these moments where Arkasha sees like a beautiful spring day and like has to kind of suppress his love for it or sort of act like he doesn't care even when he does. My brother Porthos has read a lot of Russian literature and mentioned Fathers and Sons to me a while ago and said it was interesting in context with two other books. So I believe Fathers and Sons was the first book published, and then there was a book called What Is to Be Done by Chernyshevsky, and he was socialist, communist. And when I was talking to Porthos, he was saying that's kind of his answer to that question of what are we clearing the ground for. That's Chernyshevsky is kind of answering that question in What Is to Be Done. And then came Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, which I tried reading this. It's very abstract. There's not a whole lot of a plot, and I didn't get very far, I will be honest. But Porthos was saying this is kind of interesting in context with Fathers and Sons, because Fathers and Sons and Chernyshevsky's What Is to Be Done, because this is Dostoevsky saying, well, to Chernyshevsky especially, is that really what is to be done? Is that really going to work? And then Dostoevsky's Demons, which I have read and really enjoyed, that's kind of Dostoevsky saying, no, it's definitely not going to work. Anyway, so I'd love, once I finish Fathers and Sons, maybe to go on to Chernyshevsky and try Notes from Underground again. Fathers and Sons has been very readable. There are a lot of big ideas, but there is also a plot that is, drawing you on to see what happens. I have not quite finished Fathers and Sons yet. It always drives me crazy when I can't plan my reading well enough to have finished things by the end of the month to, properly wrap them up in my reading blogs. But the problem is that at the the end of the month, a lot of my reading time goes into editing my reading vlog, because the reading vlogs in particular just take so long to edit. I mean, all videos take a very long time to edit, but the reading vlogs in particular just swallow up so much time. But I will be finishing Fathers and Sons, certainly. This book I already mentioned and was not at all difficult to finish because it's very slim, very quick, but so deep and beautiful. It's a prayer journal by Flannery O'Connor, and unfortunately I did not end up really getting to anything else for Flannery O'January, but that collection of letters is on my list. I'm going to get it and get to it at some point. This edition is neat because the back of it is scans of the actual prayer journal. And look, it was just in this ordinary sterling notebook that she wrote these prayers and kind of discussions with God. Flannery O'Connor had just graduated from college, and she obviously had all these hopes and dreams. And so in a way, there's something kind of naive about these entries, but there's also just an authenticity and a real depth of feeling and desire that you really relate to, and is just beautiful to see. Dear God, I cannot love thee the way I want to. You are the slim crescent of a moon that I see, and myself is the earth's shadow that keeps me from seeing all the moon. The crescent is very beautiful, and perhaps that is all one like I am should or could see. But what I am afraid of, dear God, is that my self-shadow will grow so large that it blocks the whole moon, and that I will judge myself by the shadow that is nothing. I do not know you, God, because I am in the way. Please help me to push myself aside. She obviously is really just talking to herself and talking to God and trying to call herself out. If we could accurately map heaven, some of our up-and-coming scientists would begin drawing blueprints for its improvement, and the bourgeois would sell guides 10 cents the copy to all over 65. But I do not mean to be clever, although I do mean to be clever on second thought, and like to be clever, and want to be considered so. But the point more specifically here is, I don't want to fear to be out. I want to love to be in. I don't want to believe in hell, but in heaven. Stating this does me no good. It is a matter of the gift of grace. What should I do about those feelings that are now fear, now joy, that lie too deep to be touched by my understanding? I am afraid of insidious hands, O Lord, which grope into the darkness of my soul. Please be my guard against them. Please be the cover at the top of the passage. This was written in the 40s, and she feels like she's living in a world where, you know, the psychologists are trying to explain faith away, and especially at the university, people don't seem to respect or value faith. And she wants God to protect her from them, but also from herself. So see, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised to find the devil's story in that Marvel movie, because obviously we live in a world today where a lot of people don't respect faith and don't value faith. And I know that. I see it all over the place, but I don't usually see it in Disney and in Marvel. I think that's what kind of threw me off so much. Dear Lord, please give the people like me who don't have the brains to cope with that. Please give us some kind of weapon, not to defend us from them, but to defend us from ourselves when they have got through with us. That's just, I feel like that's just so incisive. It's like that Fanny Price quote I always say, that, you know, we have a better guide within ourselves if we would attend to it than anyone else can be. And it's like other people can come to you with falsehoods and they can pressure you, and that's not very nice, but ultimately it comes down to you and your power to say, no, that's not true. That's not what I choose to follow. That is always within your power. It's just beautiful how she obviously is praying for grace. She wants her writing to do well, but she also wants her writing to serve God. If I ever do get to be a fine writer, it will not be because I am a fine writer, but because God has given me credit for a few of the things he kindly wrote for me. Right at present, this does not seem to be his policy. I can't write a thing, but I'll continue to try. That is the point. And at every dry point, I will be reminded who is doing the work when it is done, and who is not doing it at the moment. Oh Lord, I am saying, at present I am a cheese. Make me a mystic immediately. But then God can do that. Make mystics out of cheeses. Anyway, I'm so glad Flannery O'January prompted me to pick this up again, because it had been too long. I would highly, highly recommend it. I'm going to wrap things up there. Thank you all so much for watching. I'd love to hear about what you've been reading this month down in the comments below. I hope it's been a lovely month full of winter fun. I'll see you in the next one, and until then, stay bookish. Bye, guys.